This video is on solving compound inequalities and graphing them. This inequality tells me it's an and, so if that's correct, then I should be shading between two numbers on my number line graph. So let's see what happens when I finish it out. On the left one, I would subtract 2 from both sides. The right one, I would subtract 6 from both sides. I get n is less than or equal to -7 on the left. N is greater than or equal to -12 on the right. I want to graph this inequality. I also want to write it with a variable in the middle if it's an and. First, I graphed it. -7 is the bigger number, goes on the right. -12, the smaller number, goes on the left. Both closed circles, greater than or equal to -12, less than or equal to -7. I did in fact shade between it. So the correct way to write the inequality is with the n in the middle, showing it's bigger than or equal to -12. It's less than or equal to -7. So you try number 6. On number 6, the left one you add 6, the right one you add 4. Your answers are f is less than 11, f is greater than or equal to 6. Number line graph would be shaded between the 6 and 11, solid over the 6, open over the 11. And the correct way to write the inequality is with the variable in between the two numbers and your signs written correctly as you see. Number 8 says it's an or. So when we graph this one, the arrows should go away from each other like oars on a boat. Let's see what happens. On the left one, I add 1. On the right one, I subtract 3. My answers are y is greater than or equal to 8. Y is less than -4. -4 goes on the left because it's the smaller. 8 goes to the right because it's the larger. And when I graph it, sure enough, I have an or. The numbers are going away from each other like oars on a boat. So the correct way to write this one is y is less than -4 or y is greater than or equal to 8. You can try number 9. On number 9, the left one we subtract 14, the right one we add 9. Our answers are n is greater than or equal to 1, n is less than -1. We end up with an or, and it's correctly written. N greater than or equal to 1 or n is less than -1. And I could have written, and probably should have written, n is less than -1 first, n is greater than or equal to +1 second. Either way is fine. Let's try one more of these before we move on. This will be a two-step inequality on both sides. First step on the left side is add 2. First step on the right side is to subtract 5. You get 24 is greater than or equal to 4m on the left, -3m less than or equal to -18 on the right. Divide both sides by 4 on the left, divide both sides by -3 on the right. On the left, you get 6 is greater than or equal to m, which we would write the variable on the left, m is less than or equal to 6. On the right side, we had to remember when we divided both sides by negative, we have to flip the symbol. We have m is greater than or equal to 6. 6 is the same number, so I just need one number on my number line, and it says it's less than or equal to 6, which would be to the left. It's greater than or equal to 6, which would be to the right. That fills up my whole number line. So this is the graph, and the answer is all numbers, or even better, m is a real number. So now we come to one that's different from anything you've probably done before. I have two different inequality symbols. So instead of dividing the inequality into two sides and doing the same thing to both sides, I now have 3 columns. And I'm going to do the same thing to all 3 columns until I have this p isolated all by itself. So the first thing to do is get rid of this +7 by subtracting 7 to all 3 columns. That gives you this. Now I have to get rid of times 3, so I divide 3 to all 3 columns. And now my answer is written just like it's supposed to be with my P, what is graphed in the middle, my smaller numbers on the left, my bigger numbers on the right. All I have to do now is graph that, and my graph looks like this. You can try number 11. So my C is in the middle. I have two things to get rid of, plus 4 and times 7. To get rid of plus 4, you subtract 4 to all 3 columns. To get rid of times 7, you divide 7 to all 3 columns. And your inequality is written the way it's supposed to be for an and, where your variable is in the middle, smaller numbers on the left, bigger numbers on the right. And here's our graph. Let's try number 32. Have a two-step isolation in the middle, get rid of minus 6, get rid of times 2. So I plus 6 to all 3 columns. Then I divide 2 to all 3 columns. I have my inequality. I instantly know I'm going to have 2 open circles and shade between the 2 numbers. And there's my and. N is greater than 1 and less than 7. I want to show you number 34. Sometimes you could see one written like this and we don't know what that is. Is it an or? Is it an and? Well, I write my n. It's greater than or equal to 7. It's less than or equal to 16. The n, what I'm shading, is bigger than the smaller number. It's smaller than the bigger number, so I know I have an and. I'm going to shade between those two numbers. When I make a number line, I put the 7, the lower number on the left, 16, the bigger number on the right, put my dots over them. They're both closed circle, and I fill in everything in between them, and my graph would look like this. You can try number 13. On number 13, our first step would be to add 5 to all 3 columns. Our next step would be to divide 2 from all 3 columns. At no point did I multiply or divide by a negative, so I didn't have to flip any symbols. I see I've got it set up for a perfect and statement. I will graph between the 2 numbers and they will be closed circles. On number 14, I don't know if this is going to be an and or an or. I have to work it out and see. Let's try number 14. So on the left one, I add 2, divide both sides by 3. I get n is greater than -1. On the right one, I subtract 4, divide by 7. I get n is less than -3. When I do my number line, I want to make sure that I have my smaller number on the left, which is -3, my larger number on the right, which is -1. Both of these are open circles. So I'm talking about the 3. It says less than -3. That's going to point to the left. It says greater than the -1. That's going to point to the right. These arrows point away from each other like oars on a boat. So I have an or. So the correct way to write our answer is n is less than -3 or n is greater than -1. So compound inequalities can be given to us in various ways. They can have 2 separate inequalities with an and between them, 2 separate inequalities with an or between them, or they could have 2 separate inequalities without an and or an or in between them, and we have to graph them and figure out what it is. Or my favorite way, which is where they write an and with a variable already in the middle, and we get to do things to all three columns, and we end with a nice answer like we're supposed to. And that is our lesson on solving and graphing compound inequalities. Thank you.